Hey everybody, it's Paul again from Stretching Canada. It's Wednesday. It's what is it? It's Wednesday the 13th, and I'm back. I wanted to apologize for not making last Friday and Monday. It's been sort of an awkward time, this whole COVID thing and people sort of getting sick and me trying to keep up with all the changes. So anyway, I'm back and I wanted to go over some stretches and strengthening that have affected me, and those sort of serendipitous emails and phone calls that come in from clients or just people that have watched the videos. I noticed that in the time that I was sort of more isolated than I had been in the past, I'd spent a lot more time on my iPad, and even though I was sort of half kneeling with my computer at a reasonable height, I still noticed that I was sort of getting lazy with my posture, collapsing in the front and using the trackpad rather than the Bluetooth mouse and keyboard. And that whenever I'm working on the trackpad, if my hand collapses and touches the trackpad, it can affect or delete or change whatever it is I'm working on, either on Photoshop or something gets sent inadvertently, and I get into the habit of extending my wrist back, and so there was a bunch of things, not that anything ever really hurt, but over time, over the course of say a week, I noticed that I was getting sort of a tightness through the under part of the arm, and then eventually what some people mistake as carpal tunnel, and it was really just, and I could see this, and I didn't pay much attention to it. and then at night, sometimes this throbbing would start and wake me up. And think, okay, what's going on with that? And a lot of times when we get aches and pains in the wrist or the wrist and thumbs, it's coming from another place. And in my case, it was definitely coming from part of this collapsed posture, as well as forward heading a little bit for working on the computer and doing a lot of drawing, and I get into these where normally I'm sort of at a standing position when I'm drawing, or sitting on something that I'm forced to sit upright, or when I'm painting, I'm always standing, and so my posture isn't quite as collapsed. But there was a psychological aspect to it, and a spiritual aspect to the collapse as well. So this was like a little wake-up call, and it really would wake me up in the middle of the night. And then, of course, a few days later, or within a short period of time, people would write and say, I'm experiencing these pains in my arm, and they fall asleep. Hey, Glenn, my arm falls asleep where I feel a tingling or just this nagging ache, and is there something I can do about it? And it's just, I find it really, the serendipity is quite humorous, because I was experiencing the same thing, not sure what to do with it, or whether I should share that. But so here I am sharing the very same thing that other people have been sharing. And I wanted to show you some of the things that I do to open those up, and then sort of optimize those muscles and utilize them right away. So we're not really fully strengthening, doing training to drain, like train to drain kind of workouts afterwards, just mobilizing those muscles and getting them to work right away. So what I was doing for myself was certain stretches to open up the chest and that thoracic outlet that comes from underneath the clavicle. But the one thing that made the biggest difference for me was proper breathing. And I had taken a training session with Jonathan Fernandez in New York City, who's part of the Immaculate Dissection team. And they teach this breathing, different forms of breathing and the muscles that make breathing possible, and how to optimize those movements. The Immaculate Dissection or ID courses are incredible, and I learned a lot when I took them a few years ago when they came here to Montreal. And I was able to recapture some of the forgotten points of breathing and the key components of the breathing that really helped a lot. So that's why I hooked up with Jonathan Fernandez. And if you really want to learn more about the breathing, you can either go to the Immaculate Dissection website, or I can hook you up with Jonathan himself. It really made a difference. And it took like 90% of my issues away by coming back into proper breathing and opening the diaphragm. And I can show you those at another time, but I'd rather you go to a real pro, and he's like a 14-year breathing professional. So what I did beyond the breathing, once I had that back, I was able to sort of open and optimize the muscles in the front of the body and get through into the muscles that become what are known as the thoracic outlet. Hello. Oh, Denise Cartier. Hi. So here I'm going to do this sort of active stretching of reaching back. And yeah, I would, if I'm in a door frame here, or the jog of a wall, or when I go for a walk in the park right next door, I'll stretch against a tree, and we've done that a number of times in the past. But here, just the act of contracting in the back sends a message to open in the front, and that's often good enough, as long as we're not compensating with the bony structure and rotating away from the stretch, and holding this and breathing out. 1, 2. I'll just do 3 more on this side and 5 on the other. 1, 2. 1, 2. And this gets the majority of the pec major. And then I'll do this same stretch on this side. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll pin and stretch, or maybe massage backwards in the opposite direction. That's 4. And I can change the angle of the muscle I'm stretching to get more lower fibers. And the lower fibers sort of lend themselves to the muscles attached to the coracoid process, which are pec minor. And so by doing this same sort of stretch, but now opening the arm, I'm starting to expose the coracobrachialis and the short head of the bicep, both of which end up on that coracoid process, a little fingery outcropping on the front of your scapula that affect a lot of the breathing muscles. And also, that thoracic outlet, 4 and 5. And I'll get more specific to bicep and coracobrachialis in a second. But this is just sort of a fluid stream of stretches from here to here, and then changing the angle. So where was I on this side? 3. No, I was here. 3, 4, and 5. Oh, hi, Jose. Nice to see you again. So from here, just opening up, in the past we've been very comprehensive about opening the front and the back. So we've got the anterior aspect and all the muscles that hold the shoulder into the labrum, the humerus into the labrum, and being very comprehensive about the muscles that we open up in the back. But here I really want to try and get into the muscles that are kind of reaching out through the thoracic outlet, which is part of the issue. So we've done, pec major, and then getting into lower fibers of pec major, and then maybe pec minor with these upper angles. But by opening the arm, we're exposing short head of the bicep as well as the coracobrachialis, and we've done that on both sides. And nothing wrong with doing both sides. I just tend to like doing it, really becoming quite specific. So I unilaterally. But now here, in the past, we've done 4 different hand positions of the bicep, but with your palm forward like this, I'm pointing really more to the short head of the bicep, which again comes to the coracoid process. And I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to try and keep my arm as close to my body as I can. There's nothing wrong with wandering out. We'll actually go there in a sec, but I just want to see what I can get on that short head. 3, 4, and of course I can use something, a door handle or a chair or a kitchen counter, and I can use this as my assisted pressure. So I'm reaching up, and then I'm still reaching up, but I'm just adding 1, 2, 1, 2, and now I feel like, I need to be, so maybe in a door frame and holding, because this isn't high enough for me to really get a good stretch. I feel it, but it's not, for me, it's just not enough. So here, I'm reaching up, palm is forward, now down, 1, 2, palm forward, 1, 2, and of course you can do it, just the agonist contraction in the back will send that message to the bicep here to release. 3, oh, that's 4, and 5. Now, if I take the same basic action, if I bring my palm facing myself, say, kind of at my back pocket, and I'm going to come away from me, this is 0 and this is 90, and I come out at 45 degrees, I'm really exposing that coracobrachialis and the medial aspect of that bicep, that short head of the bicep. And this is another way of getting a little bit more specific. Again, we'll never really isolate specific muscles. We'll get more specific to the muscles that we're trying to attract. And so here, hand facing the back pocket, reaching away, whoop, at 45 degrees, pretty much center. And I can really feel that pulling on under the bicep. I can really feel it pulling right underneath here into its origin here. And again, sometimes if I'm not getting as much of a stretch and I know I want to stretch it, I'll just pin and stretch that a little bit. Let's just do one more, last one, 5. You can also do the same thing from back pocket out at 45 degrees, but internally rotate the arm, the humerus, as far as it'll go, and then come up. It's the same stretch, we just add a little bit of intensity to the stretch, and try not to shrug. There's a lot of brightness on my screen, but I don't know if you can see that. If I put my hand here, I'm trying not to do this. I'm just coming out to the side and back at 45 degrees. Makes it now my arm is internally rotated as far as I can send it, or rotate it. 5, and then internally rotate here. Oh, my screen is filling up. I can barely even see myself anymore. Oh, bonjour Paul. And Diane Carruthers. Well, hi. Long time no see. I hope you're doing well, Dan. I'd love to catch up with you soon. And 5. Okay, so we've done, we've opened up all the fibers of the pec major, gotten into pec minor, started to expose the bicep, short head of the bicep and the coracobrachialis. And so these are things that you can do, and there's a lot more, and I know we've covered a lot of these. Oh, and you'll also find other stretches, similar stretches for other reasons on the YouTube Stretching Canada's YouTube channel. But now, before I go any further, I want to activate these muscles. Again, I don't want to sort of break them down and overwork them. I just want to get them active so that the brain can say, yeah, I've opened and optimized, and now I want to sort of set it in stone. So those neural pathways, that neurogenesis is starting to take shape. So with the bicep, I mean, you can just sort of go the opposite direction, where we were going this way before. You can just lift them up. I'm going to do 3 like this. And then you can also come out at 45 degrees, but I'll just finish this 3. And then I'm going to come out at 45 degrees. And again, it's just the brain picking up the signals of this is how this is going to work. And I'm more specific to the short head in this way. Where before we were doing, emptying cans, and that's long head of the bicep and that anterior deltoid. But here, we can also attract bicep and coracobrachialis by doing things like adduction with a tubing. I've actually got one set up where you can do, tricep dips. Let's see if I have something like that. On this size chair or something lower. I don't know if you can see that. A table like this, where you're gonna, you can do your tricep dips, and you're getting basically the same muscles that need to be attracted when we've opened up the biceps and coracobrachialis, and if you want to stretch the triceps too, but you can do push-ups or wall push-ups. If doing push-ups is a bit much for you right now, by angling yourself to the wall about 4-something feet away from the wall, and hands at shoulder height, and just reaching down. So you're doing a push-up, but not against the full force of gravity. Now, to get at the, let's see, what do I have? I've got these. To get really specific to coracobrachialis, you can have a cushion or something like this, and you're trying to just pull your arm behind you, so your arm is coming towards you, you're adducting the arm, and sometimes I'll actually try and reach behind me. If I have a squishy ball, or if I have something like this, I'll use this. So if I'm, and I do, I have these set up all in different parts of the house where I have a bit more room, but I'll try and, let's see, how can I do this? Work this kind of behind me. I can just come straight to my side, and I'm activating the muscles underneath, or if I try and reach behind to get some more strength in there. So those are some of the actions that you can do to stimulate the movement of that muscle and start to build strength. So from here, let's go into the cervical muscles. Now, we've done this before, and there were 5 different stretches that we were doing that were very specific: bilateral, extensor muscles in the back, unilateral in the extensors, as well as the levator scapula. But now I want to try and go more into the scalenes and open those up. So the idea here is I'm looking straight ahead. I'm trying to keep my shoulders square to the ground, perpendicular, parallel to the ground, and reaching my ear to my shoulder, and then from there a slight assist, and back to neutral, we'll call this, and reach down, and I'm just using like 1 or 2 fingers of pressure, 1, 2. And now when you've done, say, 3 or 4, and your body goes, yeah, this is okay, I'm not creating any kind of tension or undue stress, or the brain's not picking up any threat, you can add the slightest rotation, same ear to shoulder movement, but with a little rotation forward, to the right. Let's say if I'm going to the left, if I rotate to the right, I'm moving more forward in the scalenes, I'm getting more anterior scalenes. Still the same 2-second stretch, 1, 2, and then I'll do a third one, or whatever, I don't know how many I've done on that side. And then if I rotate to the same side, I'm going to get more posterior scalenes, 1, 2. Now, one thing that I do before I actually go into the stretch is I'll either, if I'm sitting, I'll grab the seat of the chair, the leg of the chair, and if I don't have a chair or anything, I'll just throw my arm behind my back, and that helps to keep me from compensating. What was I doing? Yeah, 1, 2. Wow, that was 15 minutes already. Holy cow. Let's just stop that. It'll take another 5 minutes. I hope you have the time to stay with me on that. And then 5. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'll do 3, and then 3 with the rotation variations. So neutral, ear to shoulder, 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Posterior scalenes, I'm looking to the side I'm stretching towards. And then 3. And then I'm going to do anterior scalenes by, what did I just say? I'm looking, if I'm going to the right, I'm looking to the right. For the anterior scalenes, I'm going to look to the left, pull to the right. And I'm getting more of the forward scalenes, anteriors. And then 1 more. This actually feels pretty good. I feel a big difference between my right and my left. So from here, these are like the really lateral. If I'm doing this on my own and I have the time, I will go through all 5 stretches, which is, as I was just saying, the first one is the bilateral extensors. Then I would go into the lateral scaling muscles, the unilateral anterior oblique stretch, which is, say, 15 or 20 degrees. So if I was sitting, I would be aiming my nose to my knee, which gets more of the levator. And then there's a 4th one where I'm looking to the right, but I'm pulling my left ear forward to the same knee, and this is getting more of the posterior oblique, so the anterior oblique one way. Now this is posterior obliques, getting some of the, again, it's not going to get one set of muscles. It'll get scalenes, posterior scalenes, upper traps, maybe some of the rotators or the traps as it becomes deltoids even through here. And I find that this really helps to open up those channels. So I'm going to turn to the left, but pull forward to the right. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. And then what we did last week, we did leaning forward on a chair. And again, it doesn't really matter the height of the chair. It's just leaning forward takes some of the weight off of the compression off of the cervical spine at the thoracic spine. So you can be here or sitting on this chair, and I'm just gently tucking my chin in and lifting my head up, and then just assisting. So I'm not just pushing my head up and getting exacerbating the cervical curve. I'm actually tucking my chin in a tiny bit and coming up. So getting some of these infraspinatus, supraspinatus, some of the scaling muscles, and still continuing to open up the channels where those nerves go through the thoracic outlet. And then the strengthening for these is really just like any other stretch that we've done, it's going in the opposite direction. So if I've stretched the back, or specifically here, I'm actually going to go in the opposite direction and lift the weight of my head up towards my shoulder. So now I'm bringing my ear up on an angle towards my shoulder. So just as an oversimplified way of thinking of activating or strengthening muscles, is go in the opposite direction of your stretch. So from there, what do we got here? Oh yeah, I want to go into the forearms and then the wrist. And again, it's going to be a super truncated version of what we've done in the past. But here I want to get the pronator muscles here and the supinator muscles here. So I'm going to marry my elbow to my side and supinate. And I can either rotate or assist at the whole wrist. I tend to come underneath because I get a better stretch. 1, 2. So I'm just sort of coming underneath, finger between thumb and this finger between thumb and finger. The other 3 sort of distributing the weight of the pull. So I'm not just pulling on my wrist and putting a lot of strain here. So 1, 2. We can actually see that 3. And then 1, 2. Who's that? Oh, Michael. Hi. And Igor. I think I've watched some of your videos. I get so easily distracted on my count from 1 till 5. Actually, this is really where I wanted to marry my elbow to my ribs, because as soon as I pronate or use the pronator muscles, and I start to assist that in the same way, the elbow leaves the side and I totally lose the stretch. So I'm going to rotate, pronate in, and then, again, distribute the weight across my wrist and push with my thumb, and 1, 2, oop. Now I'm doing what I told you not to do. 1, 2, 1, 2. It's so easy for me to lose focus sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, this is how it's done. And it's not. I want to do this, and now I'm going to do this. Ready, and then this is 4. I think it's 4. This is 5. And then pushing here, pulling here. 1, 2, and it's a super gentle pull. It's like a half a pound to a pound of pressure, and it's the gentle persuasion over a series of 2-second stretches. It's going to gain the amplitude in the stretch rather than one big pull. So let's see, 3, 4, 5, could be 35 for all I know, but anyway. So we've done the supination or the supinator stretch by pronating, and then the pronator stretch by supinating and assisting at the wrist. However you do that, you can be here, you can be here, you can be here, and whatever's comfortable. If you have questions on any of this, message me on Facebook or find a way of getting through to me. If you have my phone number, just call me and I'll walk you through it. So from here, this is a truncated version of what I would normally do, but this is what's helped me in the last couple of days since I sort of got extra isolated, with the stress of this sort of COVID isolation. From here, I'm going to go from these pronators and supinators and into the pollicis muscles. Basically, I want to work with my thumb. And one of them is going to be opening up the extensor and abductor muscles of the thumb. And I can either wrap my thumb around my finger, wrap my fingers around my thumb and just pull down and then just gently assist here. So I'm doing this and then assisting 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then when I do it, I tend to do this and then open up so I get a full range of motion. 1, 2, 2, 1, 2. Nothing wrong with this. However, there's a series of different muscles. Like you can see the tendons of these muscles that form that little snuff box, they call it, an anatomical snuff box. And if I go back to this position, this sort of basically neutral position, and give myself a bit of an internal or a deviation, internal deviation, and then do the same action, I'm going to get more of this pollicis longus, or a different muscle in the thumb, which has really affected me. And I am being more specific to the 5 or 6 other stretches I can do with the thumb, because that's where my pain was residing. I started where I think the pain originated without actually doing any kind of an assessment. But an educated guess, and good educated guess, started me here. And by the time I got down past the supinator and pronators, the pain was gone. But I want to be comprehensive, so I'll finish this up. So we did this with the thumb, the deviation with the thumb. And now, if I take this, maybe just drop this a tiny bit, and I do this sort of adduction, so I'm bringing the thumb from its furthest away from the sort of handshake position towards, and I'm going to just stabilize my hand and push the thumb across. So I'm basically hyper adducting the, the thumb. And so it's getting into the adductors, abductors, and opponens muscles, the muscles that pull the thumbs together in a gripping fashion. So, and that's for me, you know, there's lots of other things that we were doing in the last time we did stretches, but this one is really where I needed the most work, because that's where that throbbing was occurring, because I was doing sort of, you know, lazy work with my laptop and the what's it called, trackpad. So now I'll do the same thing here, 1, 2, again starting off in a handshake position, abducted, and then adduct the thumb to midline of the hand, and then hyperadduct whatever I can get. And it's stretching right across here. Where when I'm doing this, I'm getting more of the adductor muscles. So hyperadducting, wow, I really feel it on this hand. Mostly because I spent most of my time in the last few days on this hand, and I didn't spend much time on this hand, which is a big no-no, because you can't just work one side and expect it to balance out. You have to work both sides. And then from here, let me go into the wrists again. So we did this, and we've done the hyperadduction. I would go back into here. So we're going to do one flexion, taking the wrist. If this is too much, nothing wrong with keeping the hand open like that. It's just a less concentrated version of this, which is where I'm at. And again, you can do all the lateral deviations and medial deviations. That's lateral, medial, those sort of things. Same thing here. Neutral, medial, lateral. And then you'll feel that sort of opening up in a fan, depending on the angle that you approach your stretch with. And then of course I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to extend my wrist back and get into these flexor muscles through here that starts to help slide and glide through the retinaculum. That's what the carpal tunnel is actually. It's where the tendons travel underneath this retinaculum. And if the retinaculum wasn't here, well, this muscle to here would just be like a straight line, you know, which is, I don't know why that's gross to think about that, but it is. So that's what the retinaculum is. And when the signals from the brain send signals through the nerve to protect and contract, it's this that's tightening up. It's all of this. So that's why I started up here and ended up down here. And so to strengthen that, what do I have here? I got an elastic band. I do. These are all over the house now because I needed these, and I would always forget where I put it, so it would end up in a coffee cup, and then go get another one. But you know, we have stretched some of the flexors, but my situation was through here. So what I do is I'll just hold the elastic band here, and I'll just wrap around the elastic band. And it's just a basic elastic band, nothing special. And I'm going to sort of go through circumduction, so I'm getting all the different muscles. Yeah, I can go up and down like this, and that's perfectly fine. But I find I get more strength and more mobility when I do circumduction with that resistance of that elastic band. And that's, you know, the same thing with the hyperadduction. But you know, I kind of covered that with the elastic band. Oh, salut Marie-France. Let's see, what else can I throw in there? Flexors, extensors, and I can do individual fingers. But for now, this is really where I sort of found my greatest relief with the stretching and the strengthening. But keep in mind that I did a lot of work with Jonathan Fernandez in breathing, and proper breathing creates proper posture, and that allowed for much greater fluidity of movement and the fluid dynamics that work through the nerves and the muscles and the fascia. And quite honestly, the tension that I was feeling in my body that was creating this doesn't mean that there's not a problem here. It just means that I was exacerbating it by not breathing properly, getting super tense. You know, some rational, some irrational, some crazy. You know, there's a lot of sediment that's being stirred up by this the isolation, and I just felt it. It just took control last Friday and right through till like Monday. And drawing cartoons is very therapeutic for me, but it just wasn't enough. And so you probably haven't seen any cartoons except for maybe Monday. It's just not enough. So big takeaways from the last 20 minutes is the Immaculate Dissection courses with Kathy Dooley, Jonathan Fernandez, and that whole Immaculate Dissection team. If you want to learn about proper breathing and proper musculature of the how to build inter-abdominal pressure to eliminate pain, lots of different pains from here. That's a good course. I can, if you have a question or you write to me, I'll just send you the link for those guys. They now have their stuff online too, and their courses are incredible, really. Oh yeah, and Jonathan Fernandez, I can hook you up with him just because he's an amazing coach, and he's got like 14 years of experience with breathing and the structures and how that works. And so my big takeaway from that, from my own experience of the stress and the pain that came from the stress, was breathing and proper posture. And then we hope you can follow along with some of the stretches that I did for the pec major, pec minor. There's another one, the clavicular attachment, which is this, but with the arm rotated inwardly, so the thumb is facing the ground and reaching back, and that can really get to the clavicular attachment that can help open that up. And yeah, so we did pec major, pec minor, clavicular attachment, the bicep, short head of the bicep, coracobrachialis, and then that afforded us some access to the cervical spine, which allowed us some greater access to and mobility in the forearms, supinators and pronators, thumb and fingers. So this is really how I've been able to deal with this, but also keep, with the breathing made a huge difference for me. So that's Wednesday for me. I'm going to be back on Friday, I'm sure of it. And I'm going to come up with something else that is just as helpful. If you have any questions or suggestions, let me know. Message me or text me, and I'll follow that up. Anyway, I hope everyone's doing okay and surviving and thriving, not just surviving. And I'll see you again really soon. Thanks, guys. Thanks for showing up. Hi, Gina.